Hi everyone, it's Autumn. So my voice is getting a little bit better. I wanted to do a quick video. I am in between appointments this evening and I am going to do the Lifting the Veil radio show tonight on Blog Talk Radio. And I'm going to talk about being addicted to a person because I feel like this is something that happens in particular with narcissistic abuse and relationships with cluster B personality disorders, where there is such a thing as being addicted to somebody. And we focus so much and we talk about, addiction, and it's become this big thing, in our culture, in our society. Addiction to alcohol, addiction to gambling, addiction to smoking, addiction to drugs, addiction to even shopping. And one of the things that has been left out of the conversation in this addiction to porn, addiction to sex, everywhere you hear lately that so-and-so has a sex addiction. And one of the things that we don't hear about in this conversation is the addiction to people. And it's a real thing. And, the same parts of our brain that are used with other addiction, they're finding does get addicted to relationships, in particular toxic relationships, which is ironic, but there's a lot of questions as to why that is, and I'm working on a couple articles, and actually that is the topic of my book that I've been working on for a while, even before my focus on narcissistic abuse, which is ironic that so many things I was doing before have funneled into what happened to me in my life and then into my the change that I made in my career and in my focus. But I have found that we tend to become, we tend to take things, there's the cliche of, working out our past with our present. And it's true psychologically. I don't know that I 100%, I take some of that classical psychodynamic, your childhood, blah, blah, blah stuff. I take some of that. I think there's a little too much push towards that we're not looking at the present moment as much as we should. A commenter had made a comment on one of my videos because a lot of times I specifically talk about having narcissistic partners, husband and wife, girlfriend, boyfriends. Even though I've been lucky that my mother is a lovely, wonderful person, is the opposite of a narcissist. But my grandmothers are both, one's deceased, the other one's still alive at 94, 95 years old, and they're both raging NPDs, just raging. Both my parents grew up with narcissistic mothers, and I was around them not as much as other people around their grandparents because my parents somewhat shielded me from them, which was good. But so anyway, I was lucky not to have I know that having a caregiver growing up is far worse than having a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife, in that it becomes the basis by which we become people and we build our whole life and our personality and our capacity to love and our feeling of safety in the world, and all these things are built. So a commenter had said, I wish all these women would understand that, something along the lines of understand that having a husband or a man in their life that's NPD is nothing compared to having a mother who's narcissistic or has NPD. And in that regard, yes, but also, kind of to talk more about that, what that means. Yes, it is. If I'm going to compare apples to oranges, they're both fruits, but they both have very different ways they look and taste and colors. Yes, I would have to say that having, like I said, a parent or mother in particular who has NPD is probably far worse than having a husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, especially husband or wife, someone very close to you. But because it builds your relationship, or your personality and who you become and the safety that you have in this world. But there's another element to that, and that is the fact that we're dealing with here and now, first of all. So when we are going through a romantic relationship, in particular a marriage, especially if you are married to and have kids with them and you have an integrated life, it is very hard. And to say that that's nothing compared to having a parent with narcissistic personality disorder, I don't know that I totally believe that. They just are different and have different challenges. Being involved with romantically or being married to somebody with an NPD or one of the cluster Bs can be life-shattering, because even though it's not the core, it's not our existence as children, the core of who we are built on that. So in that way, it's definitely not as bad. On the same token, when we talk about matters of the heart, trusting on that level, people do crazy things for romance and for romantic relationships throughout history. Humans, this is the greatest motivator, and the greatest, demotivator, the greatest difficulty that humans have encountered for thousands of years, which is the loss of love and romantic love and what it means to us. So I just want to kind of say that those two things are not exclusively one better than the other. They both are enormously painful and enormously life-shattering. And so the addiction part of being addicted to somebody oftentimes will come in the form of a relationship or a romantic interest, in order to play out sometimes what happened to us when we were younger. And then other times it's just happens. There's a whole bunch of different reasons. So I've been doing a lot of research and talking to people who have felt as though they were addicted to somebody else, to a person. And I've talked to a lot of people, and the research I've done so far, clients and people I've interviewed for the book I'm writing, that have found that it runs the gamut. People that have addictive personalities, that are addicted to other things, sex, gambling, drugs, so on. But then there's just as many people that don't have these addictive personalities that have become addicted to a person. And see, being addicted to somebody is different than being addicted to love or sex or even relationships. Because those are broad, general things, where if you're addicted to relationships, you will take whatever relationship you can get because you just want it. And the same with sex. If you're addicted to sex, you'll take sex wherever you can get it. Being addicted to a particular person, while it may be a larger symptom or it may be a symptom of a larger addiction, or a bigger problem from our past, it's very much geared towards that person. And what is interesting, again, there was a point before this year, I did not have the word narcissistic abuse on my radar. It wasn't in my lexicon. Even cluster B personality disorder, I had learned about it in the past. Of course, I knew about it. I've used borderline personality disorder in my work. I've used narcissistic personality disorder in my work a little bit, but I wasn't very well versed in any of them. And I started doing the addiction to a person, people, way before it happened to me, before I became knowledgeable and started working with people that have narcissistic abuse and were in relationships, and started doing research on cluster B personality disorder more specifically. So this, I saw it through the lens of not even thinking about it from narcissistic abuse personality disorder stance, and then I've seen it from the lens where all of my kind of psychological and my own personal emotional energy and focus has been on that. And I can say with certainty that cluster B personality disordered people people that are in relationships with those people tend to become very addicted to them. It's because of a whole bunch of things. I'm going to talk about it more in other videos and in my book and some articles I'm writing. It has to do with the inconsistent reward punishment cycle schedule that they put their partners on. When somebody, there's a lot of research with rats about this, when somebody gives a reward inconsistently, or a punishment, like you could do one thing one day and that will grant you a reward, but you could do the same thing the next day and that won't grant you anything. Or you could do one thing one day and this will grant you a punishment. You could do the same thing the next day and won't grant you anything. This inconsistency builds the motivation to want more, to try more, to work harder, even in rats and definitely in humans. And again, this is why narcissistic parents are so destructive on their children, and why the relationships are as well. So when we look at that, and we see how that plays into it neurologically, and then there's emotional consequences, there's psychological reasons why we become addicted to someone in particular. These cluster B personality disorders tend to be very addictive to people. It's the play on hope and on tomorrow, always, because what narcissists do, and I'll use that term in general, but I use that term for antisocial personality disorders, sociopaths, psychopaths, and malignant borderlines as well, and histrionics. I'll just use that as an umbrella term. The narcissists do is they provide, they never really want to come through and give back. They're always looking to take. So either because they're conning you, they're using you, manipulating you, or just because they're incapable. Like a lot of borderlines are just so focused on their own emotions, they're incapable of giving back. Even if it's not intentional, it's still hurtful and malignant, and it's still using someone really and being selfish enormously. That they are finding the ability to create, the way that their words and their actions are not connected, right? So they're always saying they're going to do something. They're always making promises to get what they can now, because then they're getting nothing. They're getting something for free, basically, and that's their goal, essentially. And so this inconsistency of words and actions messes with a emotionally normal person's brain, if you will, and outlook on them and their life. It makes us almost sometimes give more and work harder because we have this dangling carrot, and we are told, if you're in a relationship or even parents, we're told, like, I will give you this, I will do this for you, we will have this life, we will be happy again like we were at the beginning, everything will be wonderful. We're always told this, we're always working out for it. The more that we obsess over something, the more we're using energy, our mental energy, our emotional energy, the more we're investing time. They're renting headspace, they're getting headspace for free without rent in our heads. The more we are about anything that we're preoccupied with, the more we think about it, the more we're going to think about it. So part of that becomes the investment level. We're thinking about it so much, we want it so bad, we're investing our time, energy, love, money, whatever, into this person, and it becomes a kind of an investment for us that we become addicted to getting. Okay, so there's different levels of addiction. The addiction to wanting to get back to where you were. So when you were in the relationship, or if you still are in a relationship with a narcissist, you'll find that you're addicted almost to making that happen, to making the beginning of the love bombing, the wonderful, amazing relationship you had at the beginning. You're addicted to making that happen again. Or just addicted to the person in general because of this inconsistent reward punishment cycle, because of the way that what they expect from us. It could be that we have issues from our childhood. It could be we don't. Again, it could be we have addiction problems. It could be we don't have addiction problems, but in other ways, or we're not an addictive personality. It's very bizarre in my research I've done so far for the book, and on being addicted to a person, that there seems to be no real consistency, other than I'm finding now that the people I've spoken to, there's no pattern between these people. I can't find age, gender, socioeconomic background, childhood abuse. I can't find any correlating factor, addiction in other ways. But one thing I can find is that they were involved with the person they were addicted to, either was clinically BPD, MPD, antisocial personality disorder, or had very, very high traits of those, where they meet at least 50%. Maybe not enough to be diagnosed in clinical sense, but they definitely meet about 50%. So they're on the spectrum heavily, which begs the question of, why are narcissists and cluster B personality people so addictive to other people? Why? If you have any ideas, I have a lot of ideas, and some of them I talked to, and I've talked about a little bit. I'm kind of bouncing a lot of ideas around, make a video about that. But I want to ask you, why? Why are they addicted? Were you ever addicted to a narcissist or cluster B when you were in a relationship with them, or friends with them, or whatever with them? And why do you think that they were addictive to you? Why do you think they are addictive as a group? Because that's what I'm finding. Not saying they all are, it all depends on the two parties, two people, two situations. But I found that in looking at addiction to people, that this is the common link, which is either clinical cluster B personality disorder or distinct traits of it. I'm going to talk about it on the Lifting the Veil show I do every Wednesday and Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Central. Tonight I'm going to have the show. It's going to be at 9 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio. I'll put the info in the link if I can. I'm having a hard time uploading info, but if not, it's www.blogtalkradio.com, and then it's /lifting_the_veil, or you can Google it from the Blog Talk Radio website. And then if you do listen, if you want to call in to talk about being addicted to people, even non-narcissists, just people you feel that you've seen other people be addicted to, if you felt anyone was ever addicted to you, why you think that was, or if you've ever been addicted to someone, especially if they were a narcissist. So it's getting dark again. I'm always doing it right at this time because I have a specific break in between my end of my daytime appointments and the beginning of my early evening appointments, which I'm hopefully going to be done in an hour and a half, and then I'll be on the radio for 9 p.m. Central. But yeah, I hope everyone's well, and leave some comments in the comments below about being addicted to people, why you think narcissists are so addictive to people, and join me on the radio show and call in if you want to join in the discussion or ask a question, get advice, or talk about this topic or any other of the other topics that are on your mind. All right, namaste everyone. Bye.